Hi, I'm Rosie. I am a trans woman and a practicing artist and spoken word performer, and I like freshwater swimming and having a good sleep, but I don't do that as much as I'd like to. I still feel so caught up in this need to come and that being like the main objective of sex and even like self-pleasure. And I don't actually think that is what pleasure is to me, but it's like so rooted that I don't know how to come out of that sometimes. And then I also think like maybe pleasure and sexual pleasure isn't just in things that we understand of as sexual. Like when you're like swimming in the ocean on your own and you just like feel engulfed in it in a similar way to where someone gives you like a big bear hug and you feel really safe. I feel like it was put on to me very young. I remember at like lunchtime in high school when I was like 14, this guy trying to be like a cool alpha male talking about how often he masturbates, and I was like, oh, I only masturbate like once a week. And I remember being labelled as gay for infrequently masturbating, and then like going home and like not being able to sleep and freaking out and being like, oh shit, am I gay? Like people making fun of me when I said I didn't really watch porn. And then so I was like deliberately watching it because I felt like that's what I was meant to do. And then I remember in a relationship with someone I really loved having sex, and she kind of like started dirty talking in a like very softly pornographic way, and I got really into it. And then afterwards I just like started breaking down crying, and I was like, fuck, I'm so locked into this idea of having sex like a porn star, and it was like I wasn't actually having sex with you, the person that I wanted to be experiencing this intimacy with, because I was just like locked into this thing. And I got so scared and upset that maybe I didn't even know how to have sex as myself, or like really seeing and honouring the person that you're engaging with. Yeah, I think I felt like I was pretending for a long time, and that probably led to and was caught up. I always felt really anxious growing up, and that was probably where that like need to prove I could be like these boys that I just didn't actually naturally feel like at all came in. And then there's like a weird other side of that with patriarchal baggage and mental health influencing sexual pleasure of like, as I started realizing that I was queer and then non-binary and then trans, that was so caught up in being in like guilt and stigma around masculinity that I had. And there was this fear of like, do I only feel like I'm trans because I've associated being a man with being like so mentally not yourself and like aggressive and repressed. And so that's really hard to like, it's like evil way you go. If you like try and fit this thing that isn't for you, it just never feels right. And then if you try and pull away from it and find what is right for you in that like coexistence between mental health and sex and just being yourself and feeling right in your life, like that stuff that you're leaving behind always follows you, and it always like makes you doubt yourself. But then on the other hand, I do think that like relating sex to mental health has been a helpful thing for me of learning. You know, like sometimes not having sex when you don't want to can give so much pleasure. And sometimes there's like another form of intimacy that comes in like you're halfway through something and then one person realizes they don't want to do that, and you're there together asserting that that's okay, and just end up watching a film or doing something. And maybe that's some form of mentally healthy sex. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like formally I'd learn a whole lot of nothing. I remember this one class when I was 13. It was like the only teacher I had that actually like really tried with sex ed, and she's a person that started this like feminist collective in school, and she was just like so teaching us to be open and like confronting social facets of sex. And there was this discussion about rape that came up, which for like a 13-year-old and all of us that grew up in this space where you'd like make the stupidest rape jokes because that's what boys did, was so like, whoa, like this is a real thing that can hurt people. And then she also did this thing where she got us to like write what we knew about different body parts, and there were all these sexual body parts like the penis and breasts and vulva and etc., etc. And then there was like kneecap or something like that. And it was really cool just being like, we all have bodies, and at the end of the day, it's just a normal thing. And I don't think this is what we were taught, but now in hindsight, I'm like, all these different random bits of your body are also a part of sex. And then, I feel like porn was introduced really haphazardly. And there's also the issue of the most accessible sites are like so misogynistic and problematic. And I remember being like 19 or so and trying to find, like I would be like Googling feminist porn, and it was like so hard to find anything. And they're all paywalled, which is like absolutely important because it's like an economic activity and people need to be paid if they're working in a profession. But at the same time, it's like there's so many people navigating sex, especially from that young age when you're starting out, that just don't have a financial capacity for that, or haven't learned to value it in a way that you would want to like spend your $50 a week from McDonald's on. It definitely does like a lot more than it used to as a trans person. And like now that sex is almost becoming like an act of imagination in a way, because I like want my breasts that don't exist to be touched, and I want people to be engaging with me as if I had a vulva when I don't. And there's little things that I've learned and experienced with people in navigating that are really cool. But it's also weird, so confusing, and still being caught up in that patriarchal thing, just thrust until you come, is like so at odds with what I feel is right for who I am. But then also like I have this body and that's a normal thing. And like I want to be able to find joy and transness in that I have a penis, and in that my body is a way that doesn't fit with what our ideas of what I think my gender is. Imagining this space in sex to fit an identity in a body that requires a lot of dreaming and imagination because it's not physical yet. But then also accepting that I do have this body and that is okay, and that can be a woman's body as well. And that I am always going to be influenced by that I was born with a penis and what my history of sex was growing up, being told that I was a man. And I kind of want to come to peace with that and find pleasure in that, rather than feel like I have to like push away from all the things that don't fit in my life to find what does fit. But it just becomes so grey, and I think it like really reveals its sex in general and pleasure. I guess like we feel like we have to know how to explain what feels good. And I've had times having sex with people that felt like they were really seeing me and were like checking in and what feels good and what feels right. And I remember this one time just kind of like freezing, and I just couldn't keep going because I was like, I don't fucking know what feels good. Like, I'm confused. And maybe there is a joy in learning what feels good and getting better at articulating that and becoming more solid in that. But there's also this really comforting acceptance that comes with like acknowledging and verbalizing and accepting that we don't know, and that we're actually like figuring it out as we go along, and we're always going to be stumbling through it. I feel like I kind of need to take a step back from romance and sex because I've been so reliant on it for so long, and I don't know how to just feel enough with myself and feel like friendships rather than romantic and intimate partners are enough. But then there's this really interesting thing that happens when you get like romantic but platonic feelings for friendships, and you can get almost that kind of like libido satisfied from like a really nice conversation, or like a friend completely like making me feel seen in my transness, or like giving me a big hug and giving me a kiss on the cheek. I think just being present and being around people and things that I care about makes me look at and listen to and treat myself in those ways that other things and people are treating me in, which is one way in which good sex is so gratifying. You're finding yourself in a shared experience.